Good morning.
Can you turn that light on?
Yeah, let's have a look.
When suddenly we're live and I realize we're very
It's even better.
shadowy. Okay, yeah, it's good.
Yes, and do you think that we should do our usual delay? And
I would say good morning.
good morning.
And let's perhaps talk for a moment. How are you this morning?
I'm here.
And isn't that good?
I think I'm all here.
As you can tell by the clicky click behind us, so
Yes.
is Neo.
Yes. And so is our
Oh wait, I need this.
clock,
Yes.
which indicates that it is time.
It is time. Let's do this thing.
All right. This is called This Is Now, Bridge to a Better World. I'm Teresa Mitchell. That's Ani Haynes.
Hello.
We're here to be positively revolting with the news you're not supposed to know.
Just so.
And today we want to talk about the ERA, and we want to talk about the fascist backlash against all things human, and the progress that it's making, and the fight that we're all making to push it back. So I'll start with an article from the Nashville Tennessean. This is about a bill that has been passed by the Senate Republicans in Tennessee, the Tennessee Senate, I mean. Pardon me. Good morning. And they have passed a bill which has various aspects to oppress transgender people. And one aspect of the bill is that it is intended to produce the fear in providers of health care that they will run afoul of Tennessee law. The article says, it's by Melissa Brown. It says, Senate Republicans on Monday overwhelmingly passed a bill banning gender transition in healthcare for minors in Tennessee, legislation that will almost certainly trigger a legal fight if it is signed into law. Senate Bill 1 bans minors in Tennessee from accessing gender dysphoria and transition treatments such as puberty blockers and hormone therapies, in addition to surgeries. People who receive the treatments as minors would also be able to sue parents, guardians, and physicians for authorizing the care under, get this, a 30-year statute of limitations under the legislation. So they're
30-year statute, you say?
Yeah, this idea, which I think is probably unconstitutional and violates due process of law, and it comes from Texas, the idea that legislatures can set up bills that allow ordinary citizens to enforce the law via encouraged lawsuits. I think this needs to be struck down. Of course, it's not going to be struck down by the fascists that we currently have in control of the Supreme Court of the United States, which is why we need to start talking and start pushing the Biden administration to pack the courts. We need to push them as far left as we can possibly push them, because they represent the usual Democratic ratchet effect in which a law or a social norm is pushed forward by the Republicans, and then it stands as law or a social norm, and then the Democrats refuse to push back on it, or say that they'll push back and never actually follow through.
It's a strange dance where the Republicans push hard to the right, and the Democrats kind of meander a little, like, can we get back to the center? Not quite. Okay, I guess we're just only this far to the right then.
It's one of those
and we consistently drift, not really the word, run headlong towards the right.
Yeah, the ratchet effect is very much happening, and perfect example of that is the Equal Rights Amendment. So let me get to that. It was actually begun as an organized effort in 1921, and the first Equal Rights Amendment was introduced in Congress in December of 1923. So we're almost 100 years into trying to pass the Equal Rights Amendment. And as you may know, there are now enough states that have ratified it that it should be law, but it's been held up. So let me...
How? Why? Gosh.
There's a discussion about this on Reddit, so let me pass some of that along. The Equal Rights Amendment is now the 28th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, and it will protect reproductive rights when it's implemented. That is, at this writing, implementation is being illegally blocked by the current administration. And the full text of the law is pretty simple. It is just this: equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on account of sex. The Congress shall have the right to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of this article. This amendment shall take effect 2 years after the date of ratification. Now, 2 years ago, sufficient states, 2/3, finally ratified it. And there's all kinds of lawsuits and pushback. And one of the big ideas is that, some of the states have rescinded their ratification. Well, there's no provision in the Constitution for rescinding a ratification.
And I still really have never heard any good argument. Now that we know that women have souls and, things like that, I've never heard any good argument as to why a state would not want to ratify something that codifies that women are in fact equal in legal status to men.
I remember in the 60s and the
Like,
70s.
can you imagine somebody trying to make that argument out of their mouth?
Yeah,
I've heard it.
I can imagine
It's
Do you remember all those Phyllis Schlafly and all those images of women barging into men's urinals and cocking their hips forward to use them, or men going into it. It's always the bathrooms.
it is always the bathrooms, isn't
We're
it?
so
I remember
afraid.
that from being in my youth, during the first battle to actually get the ER. Well, first, I guess not, since it started in 23, which I actually did not know. I'm kind of amazed that it has in fact started in 23. I, like yourself, when we started this morning, thought that it was in the 60s sometime, but no. And in my youth, as a child of the 70s, I do absolutely remember the bathroom scares. It is always around the bathrooms, and it makes me wonder what sort of bathrooms conservatives have in their homes. Do they not share bathrooms in their homes? Men, women, children, bathrooms? Just
Good
wondering.
question.
Just wondering.
I'm just asking. It's just we got to get the Tucker Carlson. Just asking questions.
I'll get the
I think
Cocker
that's a
Spaniel
funny
look
idea,
down.
though. Conservatives should be, required to have separate bathrooms in their houses. For women.
Just asking.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they write. And the final line is, this amendment shall take effect 2 years after the date of ratification. So they write, ERA is absolutely necessary to provide durable reproductive rights. Roe cannot be codified after the Dobbs decision. It's too late for that now. So it's interesting that this ratification is here and should be happening after the Dobbs anti-abortion SCOTUS decision. ERA was ratified by the required minimum of 38 states in January 2020. The text of the ERA states it will become effective 2 years after the date of ratification. That means it is currently part of the U.S. Constitution. Let's all celebrate, except that there's
This glitch.
there's foot dragging, and
There's a glitch.
80% of Americans support the ERA, no matter their party affiliation. So if this is true, why isn't it implemented? And of course, conservatives, and I think in this we've got to include Joe Biden, who's got plenty of conservative chops, never come out and say we don't want women to be equal, because there might be some pushback on that. Women in particular might say, wait a minute. No, it's always, we got to protect the little lady. So hence the bathrooms. But the law requires the U.S. National Archivist to publish ratified constitutional amendments, kind of like putting in the law books. This is a ministerial action. The executive branch has no other role in constitutional amendments. Pardon me. I have to gargle or something. On ratification, the Trump administration immediately blocked the archivist from publishing it using some of the blocking techniques enumerated. Well, the Biden administration has stated it supports the ERA, but shockingly is continuing to fight against it in court, continuing to fight the same positions in the same cases the Trump administration did. And we're just not talking about
go ahead
that.
and run that line back again.
The Biden administration has stated it supports ERA, but is continuing to fight against it in court, continuing to fight the same positions in the same cases the Trump administration did. So this is the problem with Democrats. And I find that a lot of people who are, dedicatedly Democrat or in the Democratic Party are offended when people say this, but it really is the other corporate wing of corporate rule. And they do things and they push these through along with the Republicans,
So
simply
sorry.
by keeping it out of discussion. And Democrats do control some major publications and do strongly influence some of what we consider to be left institutions, which actually are not. For example, the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN. This should be a topic of discussion. We should be talking about this just as much as we did in the 60s and 70s, because outrageously, this is the law now, and it's being prevented from going forward just by this dithering and by keeping it out of discussion. This is really a case of news.
And
you're
John
not
brings
supposed to
up
know.
the good point of following the money. Employers, insurance companies, who stands to lose when we finally admit women have souls? I mean, women have the same legal status as men.
Yeah, I think, well, Biden administration just doesn't want to go there. The next court date is the 28th of September. It's expected the Biden administration will continue to defend itself against the states suing it to publish the ERA. For example, Virginia, Nevada, and Illinois versus Ferriero would all fight to publish it, as is constitutionally mandated. And I quite agree. I mean, not that I know constitutional law to that degree, but the law is the law. It says that it becomes effective after 38 states ratify it. 38 states have ratified it. Several states have tried to rescind their ratification, but as I said, there is no provision for that. So 38 states, blah, 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 it doesn't matter. It is now the law, has become the law. The Equal Rights Amendment should be published and put in the Constitution and recognized as the amendment that it is. And it pisses me off that
it's not.
Yeah. I mean, this is, the writer in Reddit is correct. The Biden administration is acting illegally. I mean, if the conservatives think that they have a case, that they can unratify it, well, let them bring that to the courts. That's on them. Let them do it. Let them try to pull the amendment down. Let them try to go for it and say, oh, we don't believe in equal rights for women. We're opposing the ERA publicly. Let the Republicans do that. But no, the Democrat ratchet is in effect, and we're just not going to move on that. We're not going to talk about it. And that's what really gets me going. This is
Yep.
I hope that
I think you have succinctly made that point.
Yeah.
You are going on it.
I want you to go into the social media and say the ERA is law. Deal with it.
Go to your friends, your family, your social media.
Yeah, that should be the discussion.
Yeah.
Well,
I concur. Women have souls.
So that's see you next week. No, I have some more news to talk about. Last week, Texas introduced a bill that would make it illegal for internet service providers to let users access information about how to get abortion pills. Speaking about equal rights, the bill called Women and Child Safety Act would also criminalize creating, editing, or hosting a website that helps people seek abortions. If the bill passes, internet service providers would be forced to block websites operated by or on behalf of an abortion provider or abortion fund. ISPs would have to filter any website that helps people who provide or aid or abet elective abortions in almost any way, including raising money. This sort of thing can be effective. There are things that are effectively blocked from the internet. I mean, there are ways around it. You can use a virtual, what's VPN stand for? Virtual
private network.
That and get things, but people don't necessarily know how to do that.
And you shouldn't have to.
Yeah.
Quite frankly. Carry on.
And they'll make it illegal.
They'll look to, yeah.
It's hard to believe, isn't it? I mean, here it is, 2023. After 100 years of fighting for 99 years of fighting for the Equal Rights Amendment, we've got these states who are trying to make it illegal to even get mifepristone, is that how you say it, in the mail. It would be absurd, except that it's so harmful and it does kill people, and it does create a fascist frame of pushing women back into the house and out of the possibility of equal rights. While continuing to on right-wing watch, let's watch the right wing. Embattled far right-wing Daily Wire host Michael Knowles insists when he called for a complete ban on America's 1.6 million transgender people, he was not calling for genocide. He says it would be impossible because transgender people aren't real. He's quoted saying, "I got in trouble for this issue yesterday. I, your beloved host, whom everyone loves so, I got in trouble for this issue," end quote.
Which beloved host was that? I'm sorry.
His name's Knowles, Michael
Oh,
Knowles.
all right.
He's
Daily Wire.
Daily Wire host.
Mm.
So a major right-wing source. And he's also quoted saying, "The big issue that I had yesterday was, which was then picked up in the other media outlets as well, is that I called to ban transgenderism entirely," end quote. So after that admission, he said, "It has to be the whole thing, because if men have the right to behave as women and identify as women for the purposes of public life, then women can't have their own spaces. And we as a society cannot have our own standards and norms, and we're not allowed to live according to reality," end quotes, falsely suggesting that transgender people don't exist in reality. Hello. Later in the segment,
Boy, do I have some news for him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is doubling down on the idea that it does focus a lot on trans women.
Yeah.
I don't hear that much
surely
about trans
does.
men, but it focuses on the idea that not only are people like me men, but men in dresses, mutilated men, if you want to go there, and the other idea that they want to push continually is that we're a danger to women. And this has become quite the popular idea, so much so that I'm careful never to speak if I use a public restroom. I've never been able to feminize my voice because I was raised and tried very hard to be manly, and so here's my voice. And so when I go to a restroom in public, I won't say a word, basically. He's quoted further saying, "We have to live according to the delusions of these troubled people." This is the other thing, that the idea that transgender persons are suffering from a mental illness is, that was science. That was considered science a generation ago. It is not considered science now. It's considered outdated, discredited. It's wrong. But of course, conservatives don't want to let go of it. And he's quoted saying, "I think we, the people, have a right to reality, and I think women have a right to their own spaces. And so that means you've got to ban the thing entirely." After inaccurately claiming, that's the end of his quote, and after inaccurately claiming that genocide refers to genes, refers to genetics, refers to biology, that's a quote, Knowles said, quote, "Transgender people is not a real ontological category. It's not a legitimate category of being. There are people who think that they are the wrong sex, but they're mistaken. They're laboring under a delusion, and so we need to correct that delusion," end quote. This is important because denying that genocide is happening is a very important aspect of genocide. So moving on, and some good news, pushing back against the anti-human efforts of the right wing. Senator Sanders is chairing the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, and they're trying to get Senator Sanders is trying to get Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz to testify. In a letter to Sanders, who Starbucks General Counsel Sabrina Jenkins wrote that the company is shocked and deeply concerned that the senator has rejected proposed stand-ins for Schultz, including Executive Vice President A.J. Jones II. She writes, "Respectively, Howard Schultz is not the right witness for the hearing." And she said that delegated decision-making regarded actions to be taken on union issues to a small team of executives, which includes Mr. Jones. Jenkins also emphasized that Schultz, who has been directly rebuked by the NLRB for threatening pro-union workers, is stepping down as CEO at the end of the month. But Sanders made clear in his response letter that he wasn't persuaded by the company's rationale. Echoing the language of Starbucks' letter, Sanders wrote that he is shocked and deeply concerned that Howard Schultz would continue to defy a request made by a majority of members on the U.S. Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions to testify about the 80 complaints issued by the National Labor Relations Board against Starbucks for violating federal labor law, the more than 500 unfair labor practice charges lodged against Starbucks, and the illegal firing of more than a dozen Starbucks workers, end quote. Let's be clear, Sanders continued. Howard Schultz is the founder of Starbucks. He is the CEO of Starbucks. He is the spokesperson of Starbucks, and he will continue to be on the board of directors at Starbucks well into the future. In numerous media interviews, Mr. Schultz has made it clear that he is the driving force of labor policy at Starbucks. For these reasons, the Senate Help Committee invited Howard Schultz to testify, not a subordinate, because he is the man who engineered and continues to make labor decisions at Starbucks. So Bernie is having none of it and not letting Schultz off the hook, which is nice. And I also saw that in the news that further progress is being made. And Schultz very much has been wanted. He has wanted to project the idea that he's pro-labor somehow, all on his terms.
For sure.
Big daddy sense.
Yeah, that is
knows
so pro-labor. But the paternalistic attitude, you're right. It's the big daddy sense.
Yeah.
He wants to just, it's an affront to his moral goodness that his workers are organizing because he wants to take good care of them. They shouldn't have to demand their rights. He wants them to appreciate his innate goodness and the fact that he has, given them a job that they can work their asses off and to enrich him. But it's just he's good, and those little brats are impugning his moral character.
Yes, as long as you're duly grateful and do everything he says.
Yeah.
Then you can get along with him. But it's that paternal, it's power. It comes down to power. And this is why the union movement is so important, because we live in a time in which there is such grotesque imbalance of power on the side of the corporations and of the super rich, that they take these offensive attitudes, these anti-human attitudes, that they have the right as capitalists to tell us what to do and when to do it and what to wear while we're doing it. And they really don't want that questioned at all. We have to question it. I am anti-capitalist. I am a socialist. But even under capitalism, it gets that much worse if there is not a substantial union pushback. With unions in place, it's just a matter of power. There's more respect in the field. I could go on and on about that.
You could,
but I shan't. I had another article. I have an article about George Santos, but I think I'll skip it because it's about Santos corruptly diverting money to a gay Republican group. And, that's what Santos does, so it ain't news. On second thought, I'm going to skip that. So I'll go to this article.
And you're skipping that because, in fact,
it's boring.
To say, oh, look, George Santos got called out in another frickin' lie and misuse of funds. And today's a day ending in Y.
Yeah. It's like, that's not the news.
But the news actually is there's an increasing call for his removal.
Yes.
And when there's action on that, that'll be news.
And his attitude is like, oh, I haven't done anything wrong, and I'm going to sit out my entire term. So we'll see. Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say, in the vein of criticizing our elected officials, right? Mm-hmm. This came to my attention this last week, and it's a bill being proposed in Florida. The state where woke goes to die, because we don't want a lot of government interference in people's lives, except DeSantis apparently wants to dictate everything that can happen in a what do we call that? In a classroom or public space. That said, another thing that's happening in Florida, one of their state senators, Jason Broder, is proposing that bloggers who write about Governor DeSantis, Attorney Ashley Moody, or other members of the Florida Executive Cabinet or Legislature, those bloggers should register with the state so that the state knows who they are and what information is being put out about them.
Yeah, they're just getting really blatant about totalitarianism.
That is totalitarian, right? Yeah, absolutely. So I just wanted to put that out there in terms of DeSantis and what's happening in terms of government overreach. Should we call it government overreach? I think that's what the Republicans call it when, there tends to be laws in favor of human rights. That's government overreach.
Yeah, and then they hypocritically talk about freedom. Their freedom is being impinged. And then they pass laws like this, or they try to pass laws like this. I also want to say that there is an attitude generally I've seen on social media that, we should let those those right-wing red states separate. No. For one thing, they're part of our federal government. But
Well,
the
that
other-
gets to Margie's. Let's have a divorce.
yeah, let's have a divorce. No, I don't think so. I mean, for one thing, the reason that Texas is known as a red state is because Republicans caught on years and years ago to the fact that there are cultural differences between conservatives and there are economic differences between between conservatives and liberals. And they found out that they could deny the vote to a great number of people by taking advantage of all these and creating laws which agitate against people, which work against people, for example, who don't have a pickup truck and a cushy job that they can take time off to go vote. They deny the vote to people of color, to people who do not have, to people who have to work several jobs, deliberately restrict the vote from low-income people, from young and busy people. They take advantage of this context of low wages to young people, and they ban voting by mail, for example, because they know that they are the minority, and conservative white men are very much a minority. They don't like being considered a minority. They believe they have the right to rule and to dominate everyone else, and that's what it's about. And so they are doing this successfully in Texas. And if people are able to vote by mail, or if they had a voting holiday, or if any substantial concession was made to the right to vote in Texas, it would become a blue state. And this is true of the other red states as well. And they are continually pushing to create this apartheid rule. This must not be accepted. And we also need to talk about it a great deal more. Like I was saying about the ERA, the fact that apartheid rule is moving forward and that the vote has been so effectively denied in these red states needs to be talked about. That is anti-human, anti-constitutional, and must not be allowed. So no, they can't have a divorce. Fuck them. And finally, changing the topics, further information is coming out about the sad situation with the deforestation in Brazil and around the world. In Nature magazine, there was a study by Smith, Baker, and Spracklin. They write, "We show reduced precipitation over deforested regions across the tropics. Our results arise from a pan-tropical assessment of the impacts of 2003 to 2017 forest loss on precipitation using satellite, station-based, and reanalysis data sets." So this is a data study. The effect of deforestation on precipitation increased at larger scales. So this is another tipping point, vicious circle type thing. They write, satellite data sets showing that forest loss caused robust reductions in precipitation at scales greater than 50 kilometers. The greatest declines in precipitation occurred at 200 kilometers, the largest scale we explored, for which 1 percentage point of forest loss reduced precipitation by 0.25 or 1 millimeter per month. Reanalysis and station-based products disagree on the direction of precipitation responses to forest loss, which we attribute to sparse in situ tropical measurements. We estimate that future deforestation in the Congo will reduce local precipitation by 8 to 10% in 2100. Our findings provide a compelling argument for tropical forest conservation to support regional climate resilience. So it ain't just a matter of too bad for them, they don't have the trees to look at. It actually affects the climate when the trees are removed directly in terms of rainfall.
Yeah, go figure. It's like trees are important
It's like trees are important
for the health of the planet.
Yeah.
Yeah, go figure. Well, so much to say, and I think we've said a lot. I wanted to respond a little bit ago. Jabara mentioned that they are trying to shut down drag shows. Before I get a little bit more into that, I just wanted to remind you to please hit the like button. If you like this video, please do hit the like button. Subscribe if you have not done so already. Tell your friends and family. Share the link in social medias and spread the good word that Teresa and I do this on Friday mornings and perhaps at other times too. It could happen. We've done at least one surprise show in the middle of the week in a couple of years. It could happen. What else can I say about that? Oh, hit the notification bell so that you know if that does happen. I wanted to just mention that there are several states that are looking at bills, laws that would prohibit cross-dressing, basically. In January, Arizona put forth a few bills that define people dressing opposite of their biological sex at birth and exaggerating their gender, naming that as all adult content. Um, One of the proposals states that nobody can dress opposite, quote unquote, of their gender identity and engage in singing, dancing, or monologuing, exaggerating their gender performance in front of minors. Um, and another bill in Arizona says that drag shows can only happen in strip clubs that are categorized as adult cabarets. Tennessee, Texas, Oklahoma, Montana, Arizona, and Idaho are all states with similar bills being looked at. And so, just to sort of keep track of that, Aaron in the Morn at Aaron in the Morn is a Twitter feed that a Twitterer that always has good and up to date information on the anti drag bills. There's a lot to keep track of in terms of gender equality, gender rights, and trans issues. It is sort of, I have to say, the right's big focus right now. Certainly, that's where one should focus when we're on a planet that is experiencing the throes of climate catastrophe. Certainly, that's what one needs to focus on when trains derail and pollute an entire region, um, making life hazardous for people and animals. Certainly, that's where one should focus when the cops are out of control and killing people at insane record rates.
Well, please do not destroy
Oh,
my computer equipment.
Oh, little dog. Or should I say giant dog?
Yeah, this uptight, shiny shoes, starch shirt bullshit is very effective at dividing people. But we've got to. Unfortunately, we have to spend some time to push back on it. I mean,
Absolutely, we do.
The language that they're using would ban Shakespeare plays. It would ban Bugs Bunny. It's absolutely anti-human and absurd, and needs to be called out for what it is. It's not, their right to their alternative point of view. Not at all. They're engaging in totalitarian, anti-human processes. I've said anti-human one time too many, I guess. But
that's what it is. It's an anti-human process.
It really is.
Commenters in that feed were wondering if those states would be stopping the streaming of Mrs. Doubtfire. Will they allow reruns of the Milton Berle show? Things. There's just so much to be said about drag in our society, the history of drag and drag performances, and the new bullshit that is being put out there by the ultra conservatives at this time to distract and divide. So maybe we'll do that. Maybe I'll do the history of drag and gender fuckery sometime in a show coming up soon. A very long history.
There's actually a
as we used to say in Queer Nation, fuck your gender. There's a pushback you were saying.
It goes back 3,000 years and is written in parts of the accepted 66 books of the Bible, the Old Testament. There is a fight against Canaanites because their priests tended to cross-dress, and so there is a Bible verse that has to do with not allowing persons who have been castrated to even enter one of Yahweh's sanctuaries. This thing goes back a long time.
And yes, indeed, John, they are acting like their days are numbered. They are acting, but I've said this actually now for 25 years, they're acting like the flailing machinations of the dying beast. I just want to see the beast of fascism and this ultra conservative fake moralism. I just want to see it die faster.
Well, it's really disgusting to see them taking the side of the anti-GLBTQ crusade that Putin is on. This is getting to the point
yes.
of near treason. on behalf of the Republicans, especially when they take money from the Russians to run for public office. That must surely be illegal, and if it isn't, it should be.
I believe it is actually.
It is an actual action, a treasonous thing to do. I mean, taking the part of a foreign country while running for this nation's politics, that's disgusting.
And I believe, as you say, illegal. That's foreign interference, and I've heard this phrase before. I haven't looked at that specific case, but I'm pretty sure I've heard that
Democrats
phrase.
enforce the law.
Huh.
Let's talk about treason.
Oh.
Let's enforce the law against Trump. Let's kick out those people who engaged in insurrection according to the 14th Amendment. I mean, do we believe in rule of law or not? What kind of Congress do we have if some of them can actually engage? I mean, if it's just a matter of who shoots who first, then what kind of Congress do we have? Kick them out.
Thank you, Teresa. Is this the pivotal moment where we
Yes.
Okay, pivoting to the metaphysical realms, to where we're at in terms of magic and energy. We are coming right up on a full moon. Full moon is happening next Tuesday is the full moon, and that'll be a full moon in Virgo, if I am not mistaken. And that's a good time to focus on health. It's a good time to focus on details. It's a good time to sort of look at ordering things, putting things in together in a way that makes sense for your life, sort of a mini restructuring, if you will. That said about the moon and where we're at, we are in the waxing phase. So this is a time to focus on bringing in those things that we need. And maybe that is increased health, vitality. Maybe it's looking at increased activity and outgoingness. There's some interesting planetary alignments that are happening next week that might also contribute to a little sort of feeling like you're being pushed and pulled in a couple of opposite directions.
Just like the Venus-Jupiter conjunction that's in the sky lately.
I don't think it's Venus and Jupiter per se that's happening. Well, I mean, that is happening, but that's not what I was talking about. This is more a Mars and Neptune coming into an alignment that can make it hard to focus. It can make it hard to know where to best focus your energy. And so to that end, I say, here's what the cards say this week. Queen of Swords is fall back to your intellectual analysis, fall back to good thoughts. You are smart. You have the knowledge to see your way through this. Apply your analysis to situations. If you're feeling a little awash, if you're not sure what to do, if you're not sure where to look or focus, really think about it. And the answers are accessible to you. So this is the new card for this week. We have cards from last week popping up again, second week in a row for the 10 of Pentacles. And for strength, 10 of Pentacles continues to be inverse. This week's strength is inversed as well. And what does this mean? It means that we still are spending a lot of energy trying to improve our relationships. The 10 of Pentacles really is about the coming together of kith and kin and family, the nourishing of each other, the support that we have for each other, helping the wheel turn, right? Helping everything go smoothly. But things aren't feeling all that supportive right now. There's a lot of pulls in different directions. And sometimes you can kind of feel a little hard done by members of the family and members of the community. It's time to try to heal what we can and really come together. There's a lot to be gained as we move through the distractions and arguments and dissensions of the past, the recent past. And strength, again, last week we might have been feeling it a little bit more. This
Oh, wow,
week
it's
we're
back.
a little more, yeah, Ten of Pentacles and Strength both back this week. So there are 78 cards in the deck, and I shuffle for a good 5-10 minutes
You
before
did.
this.
Yeah.
And 2 of them are the same as last week. So that to me is like there's this current of energy and it is continuing, right? It is continuing. And so, and in fact, we are feeling a little more distanced from our internal strength than we may have felt last week. Again, the way to it, it's actually time for the intellect. It's time to think our way through. And that's a good place, actually, to apply our analysis and look at our lives. What will it take to really put us in our in like our best centered self? How can we rearrange some details to put ourselves back in our own driving seat, and charting our own course so that we can feel that strength, be our own good counsel, and continue to work and repair our relationships so that we are in a very much empowered place to face the, how do we say, shitstorm that continues to grow around us. That is what the cards have. Go for the intellect. Remember that you can be calm and centered and applying your analysis in these very weird, scary situations. And it's going to do you a lot of good this week to really apply that analysis. That's what I have.
All right, then.
And so, with that, let us say we'll see you next week. Enjoy this full moon coming up on the 7th. It's a wonderful time to really focus on bringing in that which you are looking for in terms of health and personal well-being, in terms of service for yourself and your community. Go forth and be with, be your own best friend, but also make sure that you are paying attention and feeding those relationships around you.
All right, then.
Thanks so much for being with us this morning. Do hit that like button, and we will see you again next Friday, if not before. Do also follow us in the Twitterverse. We are at Bridge to numeral 2 Utopia. You can also follow me, Ani_Raven.
Press watch now on Twitter.
I think and you can also follow Positive Revolt. We have so many Twitterverses. And thank you very much for being.
Our love goes out to you and to all the ships at sea. Technically, could happen. Hello, ships.